this is Spencer Colgan from Spencer Colgan is Wallpaper. Too much noise in the background. I had to do this voiceover. The sheet of wallpaper was installed and then it was damaged. I took it off. You're looking at the darker area, which is torn paper on the sheetrock. In the middle of your screen, you're looking at glue. And then the bright white areas is simply the wall on which the wallpaper was installed. How are we going to fix this? Well, if for this particular circumstance, we're going to go to our go-to product. Can you guess what that is? I've covered it in other videos. We have to repair that torn sheetrock. We have to make sure that this wall is ready to receive new wallpaper. You've seen all of the damaged areas. Now, I'm going to show you the best remedy for this situation. You might find one primer that can handle this, or that can handle the glue, or that can handle priming your wall. I have a primer that will cover all three. This primer is the best primer around, but it's too expensive to use in every situation. We have no choice here. We got to use it. Now this torn paper, you have to get off the loose paper and get it to where it's not flaking anymore. And then you have to treat it. You have to cover it. You have to put a skin on it in order to put joint compound on this, in order to put paint on it. You cannot paint this paper. It's like painting a paper bag. Can't do it. It comes in cans too. So if you didn't have the time to set up with a roller or a brush, because let's face it, that stuff takes time to clean out. You could spot prime it. You're looking at the best primer, but it's cost prohibitive. It's $45 a gallon, retail. But if you want the best, sometimes you gotta get it. Now, I just showed you how to seal this torn sheetrock. This will cover torn sheetrock. It'll cover the glue too. Do we need to cover glue when we're going to be putting wallpaper up against it again? No. You would have to cover this glue if you were painting it or skim coating it. Why? Paint has water. It's water-based. It will activate the glue here, and the glue will make the paint crack. If you don't prime this torn sheetrock, your paint will activate the paper, make it bubble. This seals the paper and the glue in order that you may coat it with paint and joint compound. Please forgive me for the noise in the background. But we're not painting here. We're putting wallpaper again over this. So we don't need to treat the glue. But if you were painting, you would need to cover this glue with a material that sealed the glue in. In that case, I would not suggest using such an expensive product as this. I would simply go over this with guards from the same company, Zinsser, G-A-R-D-Z, much more affordable. Or You could also use an oil-based primer from Kills, and they have odorless. That would be fine. Now, before you prime this, you have to sand it. And I've already sanded it. You get all the loose paper off, and then you sand it. Let me show you a new product that's gonna save you professionals a lot of time. You've used this before, right? No, you haven't. Look at this one. Hook and loop. It's finally here. No more playing with the wing nuts on the back or the little brackets that don't clamp down when they're supposed to. And look at this. Made in the USA. Simply attach, detach as necessary, reattach. Now, you want to sand this before you put up your wallpaper, right? You want to get off what's flaky. That's it. You don't need to do anything else to this to put up type 2 wall covering. But if you're going to put up thin wall covering, yes, we need to do some restoration here. Let me recap the procedures in writing, because there are so many paths to follow once you pull down the wallpaper that putting them in writing would be far easier than discussing what to do. So please just stop the video and take notes on the following written procedures that I've provided herein. Thank you. But if you're putting wallpaper up because one of the sheets got damaged, and when you pulled it down, it pulled off and exposed the paper on the sheetrock, exposed the glue, well, this is the perfect time for me to tell you what to do. Make sure that this paper stays down. I'm using Then, and then we're going to skim coat it. So I need to, this is alcohol based, and alcohol is going to seal in the paper, and it's also going to seal in the surrounding glue. The glue is water based. If I use compound over this, the water in the compound is going to activate the water in the glue, and it's going to be bubbling on me. So I either have to use oil or alcohol. Why am I using alcohol? Because I want to get done today. And the alcohol is going to allow me to get this on today and be done today. If I use the oil-based, it'll dry quickly, but I'm not as confident that I can get the job done in one day. I know with alcohol, after 15 minutes, I can compound right over this stuff, okay? Let me tell you something else about this product. If you are priming a raw wooden door, this is the only product I know of that will arrest the sap and the knots in the wood. Every other product, you have to put on 2, 3, and 4 coats. And even then, you can still see the brown coming out from the knot. This stuff comes from an insect, okay? In order to clean up your brush or your roller, you must use ammonia. Or denatured alcohol to clean up. To get your brushes clean. remember what I said, if you used a water-based primer, this would all be bubbling up and forming little cracks because you would be activating the water in the dry glue, which, at least theoretically, means that if you wanted to wash glue off of a surface, you would simply use water. But you would never try to wash glue, dry glue off of a surface. You'd never do that. You would rather arrest it with oil or this alcohol product and then simply skim coat it, forming a new skin on the wall. Let's take a look up close. Now, why do I have to skim coat it? You see right in here? You see how it's voided now? I have to build that up so that my wallpaper doesn't sink into that. Same thing down here. I also have to clean this up. And what I'm using there is a cheap roller and a cheap tray, because you're not going to clean any roller after you have bin in it. This stuff is so hard to clean out. You just throw out the roller. It's only a couple of dollars. It's just part of the expense of what you have to do. Okay, so we're going to leave this glue on, wait till this dries, which should be less than 15 minutes. And I'm going to hit it again. Just give it one more coat and then put some joint compound on it and put the piece of wall covering up again. It's less than 15 minutes later and it's dry. I'm going to put a nice coat over this. It's powerful stuff. The nice thing about this product is that you can use it indoor and outdoor. The cleanup is ammonia or denatured alcohol. It comes in a spray can, which is great. You don't have to mess with rollers that you have to throw out or brushes that have to be cleaned, because all the chemicals of ammonia or denatured alcohol, the smell of it is enough to make you want to just throw it out. But it's a phenomenal stain killer. So if you had mold or something like that, after you remediated the mold, if you still had a stain, this would be used. Or you got grease or something else, you use this. This is excellent for wallpaper use. But now let's talk about painting. Let's say you spot primed with this. You have 5 spots on the wall that you need to spot prime. And so you use the bin primer. When that dries, just go over where you spot primed with this bin primer with the other product from Zinsser, which is called 123, 1-2-3. It comes in a blue and white can. You just want to cover this so that you have no holidays or hot spots when you're painting. I'm not talking about when you wallpaper. If you spot prime with this and want to paint, simply cover your spot prime areas with 1-2-3. Before you prime it, you want to remove this edge, because if you've put any compound up against here, you're going to see that you're going to have to sand it down, because the compound may be flush with the ridge of your wall covering. And so we have to remove this so that the repair is oddly enough, when you remove this strip, it doesn't lift the substrate, but if you remove more of it, the greater the chance you have of damaging the wall. It's a strange phenomenon. Now look, You see where this wallpaper comes? You see how it's rough here? You want to sand that so that the repair area doesn't have this ridge. See that ridge? That'll show a bump in the new wallpaper. Very important. Look at that ridge. Look how thick that is. So now you just want to take a sanding sponge and with a controlled hand, you want to just make that flat so that there's no bump under your repair wallpaper sheet. You can't put wallpaper over that. This has to be sanded out. In fact, if you can't find anything, always remember your go-to primer is going to be the top of the line primer, which is alcohol-based, bin. But we don't like to spend money unnecessarily. Neither do I. But if you're in a jam and you don't know what to use, or if you're in a jam and you need to get it done yesterday, if you know what I mean, you do what you have to do. Spend the money, get home to your family, and go with the bin. It dries right away, and you can do the job right after you do the repair. If you're not careful with your brush, you can actually wind up putting a ridge where you don't want a ridge. Look at that ridge here. If you did that here, you think that's going to dry flat? No. So you want to take a moderately leveled wet brush and bring it just near it. You don't have to get right to the line. So let's get to getting this wall covering on the two repair areas. Now, you're looking at the wall covering on the floor. Why do I have it laid out like that? On the floor, it can completely lay flat and relax. It's type 2 wall covering. It tends to be stubborn. And since it's now separated from the roll, from the rest of the wall covering that is on the wall, we have to expect that it would behave differently if we just took it and put it on the wall. So we're completely submitting the wallpaper to a different environment prior to installation. The other wall covering came off of a roll. But since this is not sister wallpaper to the wallpaper that's on the wall, what I mean by that is, you know and I know that when you take sheets from a roll, as you cut them, the sheet that goes next to the first one are sibling wallpaper, so to speak. They came off of the same roll. This, however, is off of a different roll. We want to make sure that we eliminate any environmental factors as much as possible. One of which is to make sure that it's very pliable. And so laying it on the floor ensures that it will not behave differently on the wall next to wall covering that came from a different roll. Perhaps this sheet you're looking at came from the beginning of the roll, and it's going next to a sheet that came at the end of the roll. Well, I have a video on shading and paneling and its root causes. And we learned from that video that compression is what causes the wall covering to shade. And so if you take wall covering, especially off of a 75-pound 30-yard spool of wallpaper, certainly the wall covering at the center of the roll, certainly wall covering that comes from the center of a roll of a 60-yard bolt or a 30-yard bolt is going to be far more compressed than wallpaper that came off of the outer part of that circle of that roll. Wouldn't you agree? And so whenever you're doing a patch, always remember that when the pieces are not coming off of the same roll, your goal should be to eliminate any factors that may distinguish this sheet from the sheet against which it's going to be installed, which we know came from a different roll. I have here in front of me 2 glues, both from Roman. This is clay. It's tan. This is clear. It's translucent. We don't need this 100% concentrated. It's silly. We're going to mix this clay and this clear together, because if you use 100% concentrated clay glue, you're going to be sore the next morning. It's very stubborn. It dries very quickly. And consequently, while you're up on a ladder hanging a 12-foot sheet of wallpaper with clay-based glue, unless you're Superman, your ability to get that wallpaper off of the wall and maneuver it into position once, twice, perhaps 3 or 4 times is going to be challenged by the resistance that comes with this wallpaper super glue. Mixing it with clear does not diminish the strength required by type 2 wall covering and its challenge to stay on the wall for years thereafter. No, it doesn't diminish the wallpaper glue's ability to sustain the hang life of your wall covering, but it makes your life a whole heck of a lot easier. Let's get this mixed up and get it onto our wallpaper. So now, because we have the 977 on the wall, we're going to add a little glue to the wall. And we're going to let it dry up just to where it's tacky. Because we put the 977 on today, it's dry, but this is going to give it some extra action for adhesion. As we are waiting for this glue to dry up and tack up, I'll put a fan on it. Remember something very strange about wallpaper, okay? And I'm only talking about vinyl here. I'm not speaking about paper. Even though the same rule would apply. But paper, you'd be tearing it off in Band-Aid size strips. Believe it or not, if I were to cut from this edge to right here and pull it down, as I proved to you earlier in the video, it wouldn't remove any of the wall underneath it. But if I were to remove from here to here, well, you and I both know, unless I remove it correctly, as I showed you earlier in the video, it's going to remove the wall underneath it. Okay, those were 2 points. Point number 3. I should tell you that underneath this wall covering is a product from Zinsser Guards, G-A-R-D-Z. I know I'm talking about a lot of primers. I know I described Kills, oil base. I know I talked about Bin, alcohol base. I know I talked about Roman 977, an acrylic primer. But now I'm telling you that underneath this wall covering is Guards. Do you see how well it works? I know there's so many products, but if you remember nothing I've said, if you can't get a hold of me by YouTube email or texting me, remember, if you cannot remember what product should go under your wall covering, get Bin, B as in boy, I as in Ida, N as in Nancy from Zinsser. It's the most expensive product to which I have recourse. But wouldn't you rather be safe than sorry? If you're trying to remember what Spencer said on this video or that video, if you cannot remember, here's a picture of the product I want you to go to that will address every situation that you may have. And here it is. Just use that product if you can't remember what your situation calls for. So when I put my new strip of wall covering, I already have it measured. That all I'm going to do is look to cover right up to about here. And when I cut through this piece, my new piece will go in right here, and this strip will come off nice and easily. Let's do that.
Now I just hung this sheet to the left of my body. I'm trimming the right edge of that sheet. My knife, a perfectly new blade, is resting up against the left edge of the metal yardstick you see in this frame. I have my metal yardstick following the straight lines on the pattern, and my blade is cutting firmly up against the fence of that yardstick as I go down from the top of the sheet to the bottom. You see the overlap trim piece hanging over my arm right there. I cut it to get it out of the way. I need to see my cut. And there I go again, putting my metal yardstick up against the pattern, making sure that I'm cutting a straight line. You do not want to cut across these boxes. Imagine what the pattern would look like at eye level if you should happen to get sloppy with your cut here, and you go from having a perfectly straight line at 9 feet and 8 feet, but then at 6, 5, and 4, you've crisscrossed diagonally across the boxes. It will be an eyesore, a veritable nightmare for a wallpaper installer. This material is so expensive and not easy to get. You have to wait several weeks before the inventory is shipped to you. You have to get it right. Let's take a look up close and show you what I was doing above. I'm lining my yardstick 3 boxes to the right of the strip I'm going to void. And so I'm just lining it up now, cutting straight down against the 3rd box, so that when my cut is through and through, I have a cut that's perfectly in line with the seam between these boxes on the pattern. It's gotta look right.
Where would you put the level to make sure this pattern is straight? Would you put it on this non-factory cut edge? Would you put it over there? No, you would go right in the middle and put it up against these straight lines, because that's what the eye is going to catch. How straight are these lines? It's a lot easier to remove a small strip than it is an unnecessarily larger strip. It's a lot easier to remove a small strip than an unnecessarily larger strip, and they come off a lot easier. without taking the wall with them. And that's why you want to definitely keep the underlap an inch or less in width. Flawless. And that's what you're going to get with type 2 wall covering. The material is so well constituted, so thick. It's made for stuff like this. It's made to last for 30 years. It stands up to heat, sunlight, cold. We'll get up there and do the rest of it, but that's what you can expect at the top. This perfect junction right here.